This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
This is Jana Kramer from Wind Down with Jana Kramer. Instead of giving your mom something that fades, give her something that becomes part of her home this Mother's Day. The Lennox Spice Village is a set of 24 hand-painted little houses that are actually spice jars, perfect for anyone who loves to cook, entertain, or enjoy the little details that make everyday life special. As a mom, I love gifts that help turn ordinary moments into memories. Charming, timeless, and meant to be used, this is one of those pieces she'll treasure. And once you see it, you'll want it for your own home too. Find the full collection at lennox.com/spicevillage.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Let's take a minute to unpack the myths behind GLP-1 drugs. Myth number 1, GLP-1 is a long-term solution for weight loss. True. GLP-1 can potentially be a long-term solution for weight loss if you want to be on a drug that changes your body's natural instincts. Myth number 2, GLP-1 can fix your metabolism. False. GLP-1s fix hunger, and this leads to weight loss. But the GLP-1s may actually slow down your metabolic rate as your body adjusts to consuming fewer calories. Myth number 3, GLP-1 leads to a loss of muscle mass. True. GLP-1 can lead to a loss of muscle mass due to losing weight so rapidly that your body is pulling from both fat and muscle to make up for the energy gap from consuming so few calories. If you're looking for a natural GLP-1 therapy, you should consider Metabolism Ignite. Metabolism Ignite is powered by plants and can help boost your natural GLP-1. Visit veracityhealth.co to learn more. That's VERACITY health.co and type in promo code iHeart for up to 65% off your purchase.
Garnier is proudly partnering with the National Park Foundation, the official nonprofit partner of the National Park Service. Garnier's support of the National Park Foundation's Service Corps program is enabling young adults and veterans to help care for and enhance the national parks that we all love. Want to lend a hand? Explore Garnier's partnership with the National Park Foundation and learn how you can help support our national parks at garnierusa.com/NPF.
Body Bags with Joseph Scott Moore. I was having a discussion with my wife not too long ago regarding our retirement and thinking about, what monies there are, how do you access it? How do you know how much you have? It's one thing relative to like personal investments and all that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Social Security, right? Because it's something I've never really thought about, at all. And I know I've got a lot of great friends that are drawing their Social Security right now that listen to us faithfully. And first off, if you've made it to retirement, God bless you. I'm happy for you. I think it's a great thing. I long for that someday. But, they put you on that graph, right? You go into the guts of the program and it'll show you how much you have earned to this point. It's a bit disheartening, I think, because when you look at it, you can go back and see when you started working, right? And I thought, oh my Lord, man, I've been at this for a long, long time. And it's a grind, isn't it? Every single day, you got to get up. You're going to go in. And I'm like you guys. I've had jobs that I've hated. I've had jobs that I have meh. And then there are other jobs I'm just like super excited to go into. But can you imagine working your entire life and finally you get to the point where you've still got viable health and you get an opportunity maybe to enjoy a few of those fruits? Just maybe. As a matter of fact, you get into your 90s, which is a great accomplishment. But you die. Not unexpected. But then what happens to you afterwards? Well, I'll give you a hint. That Social Security that you worked for all those years continued to be collected in your absence. And no, it wasn't by your spouse. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. Brother Dave, I've gotten now where when I meet people, I go to these social functions at the university, and because I represent Jack State on all these platforms. They're mentioned very frequently, certainly on all the television stuff that I do. So I go out and I meet a lot of alumni. I love hanging out with our alumni. I met alumni that graduated from Jack State. The oldest one I met was somebody that graduated in 1948. And we're not a huge school. We're just a tiny regional university. But, I talked to them about how they've been retired. They're living on a lake somewhere. They've got their boat, or they're just taking it easy around the house. And yeah, it comes with, physical problems and ailments as everybody gets them. You get older. But many times I find myself saying, wow, I wonder what that's like. I wonder what that's like not to have to go and work for the man, or do one of these things. And this case came across our desk, and I thought about this gentleman and our principal here in this case. And wow, what a way to end, huh?
Well, here's your bottom line, Joe. I sent the note to you on this story. It's about a father and son, Lawrence Drotleff. Lawrence is 93 years old. His son, who is 53, is living with him at the time and working. Now, at 93 years old, the senior Mr. Drotleff, he's not working. He is full on retired at 93. And by the way, Joe, you mentioned Social Security. He's drawing Social Security, and he's drawing a pension from where he had worked. So in his retirement years, he's got 2 different checks coming in every month. He has his adult son living with him, hopefully sharing the bills, So the problem is this, is that Senior Drotleff, is that how we're going to pronounce his name?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
I was hoping, because that's what it looked like to me. And
no disrespect. I mean, that's, to the Drotleff family, right. But this is what we got. So,
okay. Yeah. So we'll go with that. Well,
there you go.
The problem here is that I want to get this right, but there are 3 different things. So let me just give you the opening line here, Joe. You ready?
Yeah.
Version number 1, February 1998. The remains of a man were found in Ohio. Hikers located a suitcase and bag near Interstate 77 in Dover Township. Inside were the dismembered remains of an elderly man. Man's height and weight estimated to be 5'8" to 5'10", and 160 pounds, give or take. Investigators believe that only a few days had elapsed since the man's death. That's version 1. Okay, just found by hikers. Version 2, February 1998. Children playing in the woods in Dover Township discovered a suitcase containing the dismembered remains of a man. Days later, an additional remains were found in a second suitcase. Authorities determined the remains belonged to one person, but they were unable to identify the elderly victim due to the absence of the head and hands. That's version 2. Now, version 3 is this. And I know this seems weird that you could have, these are big differences in how the remains were found, Joe. Big differences. The case began in February 98 when authorities receive a complaint regarding a suitcase found by a group of children on Winkler Hill Road in Dover Township containing unidentified male body parts, including a pelvis and part of one leg. 1 week later, a second suitcase containing a torso was found along Bolt's Orchard Road in Jefferson Township. Despite the recovery of a body, authorities unable to determine the identity of the victim or a potential suspect. Joe, we start with hikers finding 2 bags. Then we have children playing, find a suitcase, and then days later, another bag. And then we have, again, found, and a week later, found more. But this time, no head, no hands. So, 3 different versions of the same thing.
Hang on one second, Brother Dave. I've got to make a comment here because we do realize that there are a finite number of human remains. And so I began to think about this, the distribution of these remains. And is there any chance that the stories got all jumbled up, like a nest of fishing line, and you can't see where one ends and one begins? Are these separate, distinct events? We got hikers and little kids. Little kids seem to be the common thread here. Mm-hmm. And can little kids be hikers? Yes, I suppose they can. But when I think about hikers, I lived really over in Georgia. I lived within 5 miles of the Appalachian Trail. I have a kind of a vision in my mind of what hikers look like, right? And they don't look like little kids. No. So, and this area is kind of in eastern Ohio. In at least by my view of it, it's kind of a rural area. It's not teeming with folks. So yeah, I guess people could be hiking in that area. But wow, to recover 3, and you've got those are as you and I have discussed on Body Bags. Those are 3 individual scenes. Yeah, if you think about the disbursement of the remains.
Yeah. Multiple, going back to the finder, this is something that I have learned in working with Joe over the last several years, looking at the finder because it means something, all right? In this case, when I started looking for the finder and found the different versions of what took place, and by the way, each one of the stories that I told you, each version was printed in a legitimate news report. From television, print, what have you. And it's all from 1998. Granted, that is 28 years ago, but the case went cold, Joe, because they had the body parts in 2 different containers, but the only thing they really knew, elderly man, 5'8" to 5'10", 160 pounds, that's it. And because that was all they really had at the time, the case went cold, and it remained cold. Now, the reason we're talking about it today is because of our friends at Othram and the work that Othram is doing. Just remarkable.
Yeah.
And something that they could not identify who this person was. And we're talking days. It was mentioned that when the body parts were found, Joe, based on what was observed, they were fairly fresh remains. Death had only occurred recently.
Yeah. And most of the time, Dave, in these dismemberment cases, we talk about the I don't know, not the, we talk about how it's a common occurrence. It seems as though.
Getting more.
Yeah. My Lord, I don't want, podcast expert on dismemberments on my gravestone. All right. But it seems like it's headed that way.
Isn't that crazy?
But there's so many of them now. But yeah, when you look at this and you look at these cases, most of the time with what really caught my eye about this case is that from a forensic standpoint, when you're discussing dismemberment, most of the time the remains are really degraded. But, in every statement that has come up about this case, they're saying that these are, in fact, fresh remains. So, again, I go back to whoever did this, their ability to kind of assess the world around them and having some kind of awareness. This sounds like somebody got really lucky. Because the thing went cold, but why do you go to all of the trouble? Why do you go to all of the trouble to take a saw, cut up a body, and place it in individual elements and then distribute them? But yet they're found. It seems to run contrary to all of that work. Unless possibly there's some other kind of attachment.
This is Jana Kramer from Wind Down with Jana Kramer. Every Mother's Day, I tell myself I'm going to be more thoughtful than flowers because flowers are beautiful, but they don't last. In my house, everyone always ends up in the kitchen, friends, family, the kids, and I love having things around that spark conversation and feel special. That's why I love the Lennox Spice Village, and your mom will too. It's a set of 24 hand-painted little houses that are actually spice jars, and I swear people notice it the second they walk in. It's charming, it's nostalgic, and it somehow makes even everyday cooking feel a little more fun. And here's the best part. It actually gets used every day. Whether you're starting the full set or helping her complete one she's loved for years, there's a whole world of Spice Village to explore. This Mother's Day, give her something she'll treasure long after the card is put away. Trust me, once you see it, you'll want one too. Find the full collection at lennox.com/spicevillage.
A doubly certified OBGYN and endocrinologist doctor, a naturopathic doctor, and a certified health coach walk into a room. What do they talk about? GLP-1, of course. But more specifically, the difference between the synthetic version of your body's own hormone that are prescribed by doctors nationwide versus Metabolism Ignite product, which naturally increases your body's GLP-1 by 61%. GLP-1 side effects can lead to nausea, fatigue, and muscle loss, whereas Metabolism Ignite is powered by plants, and there are no side effects. Some long-term results of GLP-1 links to weight gain after stopping the synthetic drug, which has been proven in multiple studies. In comparison to Metabolism Ignite, there is no weight regain, and this product supports metabolic health. Join the 50,000 customers by skipping the needles and taking 2 capsules of Metabolism Ignite a day for sustained weight loss with plant-based therapy. Visit VERACITYhealth.co. Promo code IHEART for up to 65% off your order today.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
This is Martha Stewart from the Martha Stewart Podcast. Ever wonder how to make hosting look effortless? Here's a secret. Getting ahead of the mess with new Reynolds Kitchens countertop prep paper. Just lightly wet the counter beforehand so the paper grips and stays in place. Then lay down the Reynolds Kitchens countertop prep paper so drips and spills stay on the paper, not all over your kitchen counter. You can roll out dough, prep a party spread, or cook alongside family. When you're done, cleanup is as simple as lifting the paper and revealing that clean counter underneath. Effortless. You can use it for cooking and baking prep and even crafting, especially when you need extra working space. Because when the mess is already handled, you can focus on what matters: the food, the people, and the moment. It may look effortless, but now you know it's Reynolds Kitchens countertop prep paper. Take a tip from me: wet it, set it, prep it, done. Make it easy. Make it with Reynolds Kitchens countertop prep paper. Available now in the Reynolds Wrap aisle in Walmart, Target, Amazon, and Costco.
I go out to my garage, I go into my closet, I'm looking at everything I have. I've got black plastic bags, I've got a couple of old suitcases. What shall I use? It's gruesome enough when you're talking about dismemberment to think about, having to do that. All right. But then how do you make a decision on the conveyance, or the, what's it called? Receptacle. How do you make a decision about the receptacle? There's a big difference between a plastic garbage bag and a suitcase, right? To me, there is. I know that sounds rather obvious. And, I'm not being tongue in cheek here. I'm just saying, if you're looking at this from an assessment standpoint, from an investigative standpoint, what compels you to go with those? Why do you run out of suitcases, or were you shy on plastic bags, or did you say, yeah, I still got a couple of good suitcases, I want to travel, I'm going to use these old ones, and then I'm going to fill in the blanks with the black plastic garbage bags? It's an interesting conundrum, and it's something I've never really thought of in all of these cases that we've covered of dismemberment. Kind of odd.
Let me ask you about the actual finding. Okay, Joe, what happens when a call comes in to headquarters, to police, that we have a suitcase that has body parts in it? And I'm going to guess that the person gets the 911 operator or the police, whoever got the call, said, stop touching it. Leave it where it is. Do not move. Just stop. And so with that call, I would imagine the first thing is send a patrol car out, verify that's what we have.
Yeah.
And once it's verified, what goes next? When do you come out there as the death investigator? When do you actually come out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, immediately. And in Ohio, which, by the way, if I've got any Ohio natives out there, you guys have a fine coroner system there. As coroner system goes, coroner systems go, Ohio has one of the best in the country. I've trained many of them over the years. I don't do it currently, but years ago I did. And just a great group of folks. They would have, the sheriff's office would have alerted the coroner almost immediately, because here's the thing. They're going to get their CID out there, because this is obviously something that is that implies a homicide. You got dismemberment. My first stopping off point in my mind as a cop is going to be homicide. But also, there's no rescue here. There's no attempt to save a life or anything like that. You got to call the coroner. I think somebody that just graduated from the police academy last week and they throw them on the road, they're like, yeah, we got to call the coroner. So they would be out there pretty quickly. Here's the weird thing for me, because, we've got these scenarios, which you did a fantastic job of breaking this down, because you see how kind of complex this sort of thing is. Do you come across one set of remains and then you go out and you search that area? I cannot imagine that the local police and the sheriff, they've got a lot of resources because of kind of the isolated nature of it. But you go out there and you look in eccentrically. So you start where the suitcase is. And if you imagine like a big swirl, kind of extending out eccentrically from the center, you go out and you look, and there's just, at some point in time, you're thinking, okay, there's nothing else out here. I've got this one bag, or I've got this one suitcase. There's kind of a funny little aside that I see in social media every now and then, particularly in the true crime community, where there'll be a picture of a black plastic bag on the side of the road, where like some work team has come by and cleaned up trash. And the meme reads like, my true crime superpowers have been activated. I wonder what's in that bag, because you're looking at it and you're thinking, is there anything else? So if you leave from that initial scene and you've got that one set of whatever it might be, well, if you're on patrol, I would have to imagine that, your head is always on the swivel. You're trying to decide, where's the rest of him? Because I can tell you, Dave, once they got him to the morgue, they would realize that, well, they're shy a few parts, if you know what I mean.
Well, And that was actually something that had to do with problems in identification, apparently, even though it was 98. And even though we were a couple of years removed from the O.J. Simpson trial that was all about DNA, there still were problems identifying the body. And the head and the hands were missing. I've tried to determine, did they ever find them? And they didn't. But Joe, when you're looking at the remains, you've got them in the suitcase and possibly a bag. After you have done the search around the body, around the remains, and you've determined we got nothing else out here, do you then, how are the remains transported? I mean, in a suitcase, they're going to be sloshing around or whatever else. It's already been opened. I mean, there's going to be insect activity. There's going to be a lot going on with this. How are they going to transport the suitcase and the bag from where it's found to the lab?
Simply put, you're going to put it in a body bag.
Okay.
You're going to put it in a body bag, and it's an excellent question because I can see why, how people will, it looks, the facility of it. You think, I can facilitate this by merely grabbing the handle on the suitcase and continue to use it as conveyance. Here's the problem. That suitcase is now part of a criminal investigation. So it's no longer a receptacle for human remains. I'd like to go back just for a second and think about something we talked about last week with Celeste Rivas. And that is, I think I mentioned this, it's the only time in my experience as a death investigator or as commentator where a body bag has now become a piece of evidence. And they're actually swabbing. They talked about in Rivas's autopsy report, they're swabbing each one of the 6 nylon handles, woven nylon handles on that. Now, you might think, and you'd be dead on accurate, that the handle that in 98, we could not necessarily get touch DNA, but even just touching that bag by the handle, well, that's a specific point of contact with a perpetrator who's going to grab it. So you can't, you might look at it and think that it has the utility. It's kind of like saying, I found a body in the trunk of a car. The keys are in the ignition. We found it as investigators. I think I'll just hop in the car. It's got gas in it, motor operates, and I'm going to drive it to the police, garage, and we'll evaluate. No. No, you keep that in a static position the best you can, and you load it up and you convey it there, because that car that I'm using in that example is just like the suitcase or those bags. Those bags are smooth, non-porous plastic surfaces. We can fume those bags, look for fingerprints on the outside of the bags. But here's the problem. If you ain't got fingerprints in APHIS, then, my old saying, it ain't worth gunpowder to blow it to hell. Because, you might hope that sooner or later somebody will be printed that comes back in the system, the automated fingerprint system that we have, and we've had it for years and years. But if you're not in the system, any unknown fingerprints that you collect at that moment in time, it's not going to help you. But you have to treat it as though it can help you in the future. It's kind of like the remains. Those people back in 98 had no idea, what science would hold for us, and try to understand, kind of the journey that the person and the body has been on. And that's a major thing to try and unlock. But I can tell you who actually has the keys. It's our friend, David Middleman, in the Woodlands, Texas.
This is Jana Kramer from Wind Down with Jana Kramer. Every Mother's Day, I tell myself I'm going to be more thoughtful than flowers because flowers are beautiful, but they don't last. In my house, everyone always ends up in the kitchen, friends, family, the kids, and I love having things around that spark conversation and feel special. That's why I love the Lennox Spice Village, and your mom will too. It's a set of 24 hand-painted little houses that are actually spice jars, and I swear people notice it the second they walk in. It's charming, it's nostalgic, and it somehow makes even everyday cooking feel a little more fun. And here's the best part. It actually gets used every day. Whether you're starting the full set or helping her complete one she's loved for years, there's a whole world of Spice Village to explore. This Mother's Day, give her something she'll treasure long after the card is put away. Trust me, once you see it, you'll want one too. Find the full collection at lennox.com/spicevillage.
This is Chelsea Handler from Dear Chelsea. This podcast is sponsored by Veracity. Welcome to an all-natural way to slim down, get energized, and sharpen your focus. Veracity is revolutionizing health by tackling the root cause of so many issues. With Veracity's drug-free, clinically proven, and doctor-formulated solutions, you can support your body's needs to live your healthiest life. If your goal is weight loss, try Metabolism Ignite, the #1 doctor-recommended GLP-1 booster and GLP-1 alternative. Metabolism Ignite has sold out 10 times for a reason. No side effects, no allergens. Metabolism Ignite is a natural, safe, plant-based aid that results in an 85% reduction in hunger and is clinically proven to lose, on average, 9 pounds in 90 days. And Metabolism Ignite is safe for everyone, including breastfeeding new moms and women in perimenopause. So before Metabolism Ignite sells out again, make the switch to GLP-1s the natural way. Head to veracityhealth.co and use code IHEART for up to 65% off your order. Once again, that's VERACITY. Health.co for up to 65% off, and make sure you use my promo code IHEART.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
Ever wonder how to make hosting look effortless? Here's a secret. When prepping for cooking and baking, get ahead of the mess with new Reynolds Kitchens countertop prep paper. Just lightly wet the counter so the paper grips. Lay it down, and drips and spills stay on the paper, not on your counter. Cleanup is as simple as lifting it away to reveal clean counters. Effortless? It is, thanks to Reynolds Kitchens countertop prep paper. Wet it, set it, prep it, done. Available in the Reynolds Wrap aisle at Walmart, Target, Amazon, and Costco.
It's well known my aversion to jigsaw puzzles. I was never good at it. I never had the patience for it. But, you know, in life, sometimes you're forced to do things like that you might not want to do, but you got to do them. You know, just like you're going to put a jigsaw puzzle together with your family on Saturday afternoon, and it's raining outside. You know, Dad's going to bite the bullet and you're going to sit down and do it, even though I felt like throwing the pieces across the room because it's just too overwhelming. In my work life, though, I took a lot of pride in trying to piece things together, not just intellectually, but also from an evidentiary standpoint. Dave, you know what one of the problems is when you get a dismembered body? And they were very specific. I'm going to ask you to call up the numbers that you stated earlier. Did they or did they not give us a specific height? Or the range was very tight, it looked like to me. What was
range,
that?
5'8" to 5'10", and 160 pounds, give or take.
Yeah, so you figure, we know from the movie Jerry Maguire, the little boy says, the average human head weighs about 10 pounds. Did you know that that's actually accurate? That little statement, that little boy, I love that movie, by the way. That statement that kid made in that movie is pretty accurate. Of course, it's going to vary from person to person, but I'm thinking about stature from an anthropology standpoint. You say, well, Morgan, these are fresh remains. Why would you even bring up anthropology? Well, here's the reason. Anthropologists set the gold standard when it comes to measurement of the human form. And they have very specific calculus that they use in order to come up with the length. You have to have the big thing that you use in anthropology, at least to my way. And granted, I am not a graduate level anthropologist. I'm a forensic scientist, but I play one on TV. I love forensic anthropology. I always have. One of the key elements to anthropology assessment, Dave, are actually the femur, the long bones in the body. And so, but in this case, we're missing the head. All right. So how big was his head? I like to think I've got a head that is a lot larger than most. If you look at it, I can't get a good hat size for my head. Everything I have to expand it completely out. My wife says, well, it's full of brains. I think it's because my head's full of BS most of the time. But my head is dimensionally is essentially, if you want to think about it from, the chin to the crown, is probably longer than most. So if you're trying to nail down a height, because, stature is essential to trying to go about and talk about it. We've got an elderly guy. We think that he's 5'8" to 5'10", and he might weigh 160 pounds. 160 pounds is very specific. That also gives me a lot of information about the status of the body. Because, just going back to, again, Celeste Rivas, and she's contained, right? Just like this case, they came up, the number for her weight, if I'm not mistaken, was like in the 60s, I think is where it was. But her body was so degraded and it had become, let's face it, it had liquefied. Yeah. You don't have that here. So you're able to get an idea of overall weight, but you're going to have to calculate, well, how much would a body weigh without hands? How much would it weigh without a head? Do you know how we weigh bodies in the morgue, Dave?
No idea.
Have I ever told you this? There used to be, I'm thinking back, there used to be this contraption that you could wheel in beside the body, and you would have to factor in the weight of a stainless steel tray with a body in. And it's a winch system, and you hook straps underneath, and you wind it up, click, 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 like that, and you press the button, and it gives you the weight of that thing that's being held. You subtract for the weight of the stainless steel tray, and that gives you the body weight. And they still have the same thing now, where you push the body with a gurney now and a tray perhaps onto a weighted system. It's like weighing a truck. You push it up on this platform, there's an indwelling scale in there, and that's how we weigh the body. And you can get accurate weights of the physical remains that you have. Just follow me here. However, you can take that number all you want, but you have to factor in all those things, Dave, that you're absent. We're talking about hands, we're talking about a head, and Lord only knows what else might be missing.
All right, now, we got to get this body identified, and you've got to find out, how did he die, right? I mean, there has to be, he didn't just get cut up and thrown in a suitcase. He died first. And how are you going to go about trying to identify that? Because hey, you mentioned Celeste Rivas. We have had that identification, of how she possibly died. Yeah. And so did they do the same thing with the 93-year-old man?
You know what? I'm so glad you asked this about this case. With this, this is, physicians love to use the term a diagnosis of exclusion. And I always use the example of, and God bless people that have this condition, but people that have lupus. Lupus presents in so many different ways, right? You have all these factors that surround it. It's a miserable disease to have. And, doctors have to check off everything else in the world before they arrive on lupus, okay? Well, here's the problem with an elderly gentleman that is missing his head and he's chopped to bits. One of the big things that we look at here is, what happened to his head? Okay. Does he have a gunshot wound to the back of the head? Did he sustain a blow to the back of the head? No. You can't make that assessment. What you can do is you come back if you have the heart, and that's probably my first stop on this little journey of the autopsy. You're going to see what his heart looked like. Well, let me tell you what his heart's going to look like. He's in his 90s, okay? Mm-hmm. And many people, there's a term that I absolutely hate that doctors use, both in practice, out in general practice, when they have a patient die. And also the medical examiner coroner community has been guilty of this too. They will list the primary cause of death as sequelae is the term. And it's a bizarre term. So they'll say sequelae. And what they mean by that is they're kind of throwing their arms up in the air, their hands up in the air and saying, God called. Is essentially what they're saying. And that applies most of the time with people that are aged. You'll also get, and I think that this is probably a bit more intellectually honest, some physicians will say circumstances associated with advanced age, or I've actually seen them in the top line on the death certificate, just put advanced age. Because you don't necessarily have a lot to hang your hat on. If you're looking for somebody, for instance, and what we'll see in the morgue with somebody that's had a classic heart attack, like an MI, myocardial infarction, when you do that dissection on the heart, first off, you'll see, well, how blocked are their associated cardiac vessels or coronary vessels? And then is there any evidence of previous MI or heart attacks? And then do you have any evidence of something that's fresh? And sometimes those little evidences of fresh heart event, are striking. You can back it up because what this means is that when the coronary arteries get blocked, that heart muscle, the myocardium, which the heart is one gigantic muscle, if oxygenated blood is shut off from that area, then the muscle dies. In that area that are affected, wherever that blockage is, it dies. And so, they'll talk about lots of times that, the heart, you've only got 85%. You're functioning at 85%. Well, what that means is that you've got 85% of your heart that's still doing the work that it would have done when you were disease-free, 100%. And so it's having to make up. And that can lead eventually to, cardiac failure. So when you're making a diagnosis like this, and this is kind of a complex thing to do, this is not like, you don't want to give this case to somebody that's fresh out of training. Mm-hmm. All right. It's a bit nuanced. It requires a bit of finesse, when you're looking at everything, because you really have to do the mental gymnastics. If just simply by missing the head, some people will say, well, that makes it a lot easier. Well, maybe so, but are you satisfied as the person that's going to sign the death certificate of signing this? Just pay attention to what I'm saying. Are you comfortable enough with a dismembered body to say, yeah, this is natural and not homicide? Just think about that just for a second, because, that's the road you're going to go down. And in this particular case, they're faced with this decision, Dave.
And it's an important one, because if this person died naturally, they wouldn't have hacked themselves up and put themselves into a suitcase in a separate bag. So one has to look at it as this person, at the very least, was abused as a corpse. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, when I get down to this nitty gritty here, I want to point something out, friends. And we've talked about this on the show on multiple occasions. It bears repeating now. 1998, February 98, they did run DNA. They did get DNA from the corpse. They were able to create the profile. Problem is, if that DNA profile is not in a system anywhere, you have nothing to compare it to.
Nothing. Yeah.
And so because of that, the case went cold and it sat there for years and years and years. But this is where, and we started off at the very beginning part of this as an Othram event, because there are now ways of taking this DNA and finding relatives, building a family tree. And this genetic genealogy has been very effective in solving a number of very high profile crimes. And used here, the investigation was able to identify the remains. And once identifying the remains, they know what Paul Harvey used to call the rest of the story. The problem is you're left with believing a story I don't necessarily believe, Joseph Scott Morgan, but I'm not the investigator or the judge.
I know, right? I share your concern over this, because it's like I would not want to be in this position, because if I'm living up in this Dover Township area in Ohio, I got questions. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I got a lot of questions. So you're telling me that back in 98 that you guys recovered a dismembered body in multiple in bags and suitcase, and we're still missing elements of the body, and this is not a homicide? Convince me. Well, Dave, it turns out as a result of DNA testing, all roads lead back to family, right? Mm-hmm. And through that testing that was conducted by our good friends down in the Woodlands, Texas, of course, we're talking about Othram. They have a patented program that they use that's called a forensic grade genome sequencing. And it's something that is unique to David Middleman and Kristen down there in those parts. And of course, as you know, anybody that wants answers are going to go there, kind of the unveiling of these things that have been a mystery for years and years and years. When you look at this, they were able to determine that this gentleman, he's got a living son. And you had mentioned him at the top of the show. Dave, we're talking about a fellow who is now well up into his 70s, I believe.
He's 81. He's 81.
Oh, he's 81. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let me do the arithmetic. Yeah. He'd be 81 years of age. Mm-hmm. He's just shy. Well, I'll say shy by a decade. This family lives a long time. When you think about it, he's shy by a decade of his dad's age, when his dad was essentially cut up. I find that very interesting. And gee whiz, I wonder if the cops had questions for him, Dave.
Joe, because again, you go back to at the time this occurred, they could not identify the remains. And so without a family member coming forward and saying, hey, my 93-year-old dad is missing, help me find him, with nobody saying that out loud, the case went cold and remained cold. And the closest that investigators came to finding out what happened was in 2010, Joe. In 2010, it was discovered that Larry Drotleff was collecting his father's Social Security. Larry's father would have been, if he were alive in 2010, well, golly gee whiz, beef, he would have been 105 years old, 106, okay? He was born in 1904. Social Security's going, no, man, who's getting this check? Because it's not a 106-year-old man, okay? So in 2010...
This guy would have had a full awareness of the end of World War I.
Oh, yeah.
to frame it out.
Again,
He
born
would have
in
seen the
19
doughboys come home from
Yes.
France.
He might, Joe, in 1904, he was born, which means, wow, not only he would have been at the parades when Johnny came marching home. He would have been there waving the flag. You're right, 100%.
Yeah, he would just have been like just shy of the cusp of eligibility.
Right.
That gives you an idea how old this guy is.
He would have been too old to serve in World War II.
Yes. Yeah, he would have been far too. And Dave, haven't we heard about these cases in recent years?
Yes.
You know, where they've gone back and they've audited these things. There are people on the rolls out there that are getting Social Security and the age that's stated, you know, these people are like 140 years old or something like this.
Yeah.
But they caught this one. And please, you know, tell me a little bit more about this.
Yeah, bottom line being the bottom line. In 2010, they isolated the Social Security stuff and they stopped payments on it. Now, I don't know the intricacies to this because I haven't dug into that part of the investigation. We were focusing on the identity of the human remains that were found and the fact that his son collected his Social Security. And by the way, Larry Drottliff collected his father's pension too. The total amount of benefits this guy collected, over about $250,000, nearly $250,000 in benefits he collected. But going back to 1998, February 1998, remains found in a suitcase and a bag. And once the body was truly identified as being the victim here that we've been talking about, when it was Larry Drottliff, his father was called Lawrence, not Larry. I apologize. When Lawrence Drottliff was positively identified, they reopened this case in 2023, Joe, and started looking at things. In 2024, the investigation came down where they had enough to send it to Othram. And, you know, we've talked about how it takes time. It's not like you just send what you have to Othram and they come out, ding, 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 here's your name. It takes so much time because you send stuff to Othram, they break it down. They send back the information to the law enforcement. Law enforcement has to go back out in the field in a lot of cases, doing more interviews, trying to find more people. And it takes time to build out this tree. And in this case, it took about 2.5 years. But they finally did come down to, wait a minute, we know who the son is. And once they identified the son, they identified the biological remains of Lawrence A. Drottliff. His son, Larry Drottliff, is called in. Larry's now 81, by the way, and they sit him down and they say, Larry, these remains of your dad. Tell it, you know, we already nailed you for collecting his stuff. So talk to us, man. How did your dad end up in that suitcase? And that's when Larry Drottliff actually admitted. But Joe, here's his story. Larry Drottliff claims that he's 53 years old when he comes home from work. And he's living with his elderly father, who's 93. And he walks in the door, and dad is dead. Now, you have to believe Larry Drottliff in this. Found my dad dead. And, yeah, I wanted to collect his benefits, so I hacked up his body. I put his body in the suitcase. I put his remains in the bag. And by the way, I also took some other parts of his remains that you can't find, and I threw those in a dump. I put them in bags like trash and threw them in a dumpster near where I work in 1998. So here we are. It's 2026, and he's admitting 28 years ago, I disposed of my father's head and hands in a dumpster near where I work. You ain't finding those.
No, no way.
You're left with believing him that he came home and found his 93-year-old dad dead. And Joe, I've met some 93-year-old people that were, you wonder how they're still alive, barely breathing. And I learned how to shoot pool from a man who was 93 years old. Right. John Jennings taught me how to shoot. He was 93 when I met him. And
and it's amazing. You never know, the level of somebody's vitality. Yes. And the beauty of it also is the history that they bring along with them.
Yes.
I'm sure that in this dad's mind, he had no way of seeing, what the future held, obviously. I don't know how malevolent the son was, during this period of time. There's no excuse for the abuse of a corpse. And then you go to the moral level of it, the abuse of your father's corpse.
Right.
I was talking with Kimmy about this case yesterday, and me and my wife had the most lovely conversations. We were sitting there, and you were thinking, and this has happened before, how in the world does someone take a saw to your parents' remains? I don't know. And look, guys, there's many things that I don't understand. I can't do the arithmetic on it.
Yeah, he's used a handsaw, Joe. He used a handsaw on this guy's body.
And he had him in a place that he could do this and never be detected. If you've got two guys that are living together, an elderly father, who's going to miss him? Yeah. If by that age, and there's a high probability, a lot of his friends have already passed on. Are there other family members out there that want to know, what happened to our uncle? Where is he? I don't know. He just kind of wandered off. It would require an ongoing effort, I think, on the part of the son to keep up the secrecy. And of course, after a while, guess what? People stop asking questions. The beauty of it is this. Now, with the technology we have, questions that seemed unanswerable in the past are now just a keystroke away. That's why I urge all of you all, just like in this case, to go to DNAsolves.com. That's our friends at Othram. Check out their website. Look through all of those cases. There might be something you want to throw a few bucks to. They don't want thousands of dollars from you guys. Just a few bucks sent their way could flip the switch on getting these gigantic mysteries brought to a resolution. That's DNAsolves.com. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.
This podcast is sponsored by Veracity. Everybody I know is talking about GLP-1s, and you all know I prefer natural options in my lifestyle, always. Welcome to an all-natural way to slim down, get energized, and sharpen your focus. Veracity is revolutionizing health by tackling the root cause of so many issues, metabolism. With Veracity's drug-free, clinically proven, and doctor-formulated solutions, you can support your body's needs to live your healthiest life. Veracity founder and CEO Allie Egan is a certified hormonal health coach. Her personal experience with metabolic issues inspired her to develop holistic solutions for achieving optimal health. Make the switch to GLP-1s the natural way. Head to veracityhealth.co and use code IHEART for up to 65% off your order. Once again, that's VERACITY health.co for up to 65% off, and make sure you use the promo code IHEART so they know we sent you.
Lots of places can expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats to your identity, which is way more than anyone can do on their own. If we find anything suspicious, like new loans or changes to your financial accounts, we alert you right away, all through text, phone, email, or the LifeLock app. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/iHeart. Terms apply.
This is Martha Stewart from the Martha Stewart Podcast. Ever wonder how to make hosting look effortless? Here's a secret. Getting ahead of the mess with new Reynolds Kitchens countertop prep paper. Just lightly wet the counter beforehand so the paper grips and stays in place. Then lay down the Reynolds Kitchens countertop prep paper so drips and spills stay on the paper, not all over your kitchen counter. You can roll out dough, prep a party spread, or cook alongside family. When you're done, cleanup is as simple as lifting the paper and revealing that clean counter underneath. Effortless. You can use it for cooking and baking prep and even crafting, especially when you need extra working space. Because when the mess is already handled, you can focus on what matters: the food, the people, and the moment. It may look effortless, but now you know it's Reynolds Kitchens countertop prep paper. Take a tip from me: wet it, set it, prep it, done. Make it easy. Make it with Reynolds Kitchens countertop prep paper. Available now in the Reynolds Wrap aisle in Walmart, Target, Amazon, and Costco.
This is Sophia Donner from OK Storytime. This summer, find your next obsession on Prime Video. And listen, we're not saying you need another obsession, but there could be a lot worse ones. Steamy romance, addictive love stories, and the book-to-screen favorites you've already read twice, so why not watch them a third time? Off Campus, Elle, The Love Hypothesis, and more. Slow burns, second chances, chemistry you can feel through the screen, and it makes you wish you were actually in that movie. We've got binge-worthy series, can't-miss movies, perfect for when you're ignoring your own problems or procrastinating, as one does. Your next obsession is waiting. Watch only on Prime.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.